I'm Katrina Curtis, and this is Baking with Katrina, and we have a little bit of a scenery change because I'm not going to do any baking today. I just want to let everyone know the background of why baking is science, because everyone talks about how it is a science, but no one really goes into depth about why it is considered a science. So just like start it off, baking is a science because in baking you follow a procedure that's very specific, because if you add too much of one ingredient it'll come out with different results. Just like how in science you follow a precise procedure so that you can replicate your results consistently. So now I'm just going to get into specific examples of science in baking. The second step is creaming the butter and sugar. So creaming butter and sugar is basically just mixing them together so that they come together and form one mixture. But the special thing about creaming the butter and sugar is that the paddle helps to create air, because the sugar crystals are very jagged and they cut into the butter and they cut air bubbles into the butter, so that the butter then forms a layer around the air bubbles so that they can remain in the batter, which makes it lighter and fluffier. And this is really important for baked goods like cakes, cupcakes, and other things that you want to be light and fluffy. But if you want something to be more dense, more chewy, don't mix them together as long. So usually step 2 is adding the egg. Adding the egg can either be a whole egg or an egg yolk, but there are 3 main reasons for using eggs in baking. The first one is that the protein in the eggs forms a layer around the butter covered air bubbles so that they don't collapse while baking in the oven. And then the second reason is that it provides a much needed liquid in your batter, because you don't always want to add like an extra oil or like milk or water. And then the third reason is that it adds the very appetizing like yellow golden tinge when baked. So usually after your egg you start adding in your dry ingredients, and this includes adding your flour. So flour is basically the thing that gives all your baked goods structure. There's many different kinds of flour, but we're just going to be talking about regular like all-purpose like white flour. And that kind of flour has gluten, which is made up of 2 proteins present in cereal grains. This is why lots of people can't have different like wheat cereals or like cereals made out of flour, because it has gluten. And this is like the gluten helps provide structure because it forms a elastic network around all your air bubbles, which helps hold everything together when baked in an oven. But you have to be really careful not to mix it too much, because if you do, it can make your whole dessert very heavy and dense, and if you overdevelop the gluten, it's really hard to go back. So you pretty much have to start from scratch. And this is in every recipe, like cookies, cakes, cupcakes, brownies, especially in cookies and like cake. It's really important not to do that. But in like bread, obviously, it's needed, so you don't have to worry about overmixing that. And if you're using like gluten-free substitutes like almond flour or like oat flour, you don't have to worry about this because there is no gluten in those type of flours. And next is usually the baking part, the heating part. So the main thing that causes the rise in your baked goods is the baking soda and baking powder. I've previously mentioned this in another video, but basically the baking soda and baking powder, they cause a reaction to release carbon dioxide into the batter. And as the heat rises, vapor forms from the water in the butter and the eggs, and this vapor or the gas eventually expands and enlarges the air bubbles within the batter, so that makes it much more airy. And to prevent from the gas escaping the baked good and like leaking out. The gluten is there to hold everything together and maintain your baked goods. Finally, we're almost done. It's step 5 and everything's coming together as the heat continues to rise. The egg proteins begin to coagulate. The flour has absorbed any remaining moisture in the dough or the batter, and the gluten has lost all its elasticity. So now your batter is pretty much in its final form, its final state, and it's almost ready to be pulled out. Finally, for the last step, we have browning. So the main reason why your raw batter does not taste the same as your end product is because of the Maillard reaction, which is the breaking down and the browning of proteins, and the caramelization process, which is the browning and breaking down of sugars in your batter. And these processes are what give your desserts that golden brown color, and that is it. That's how baking relates to science, science relates to baking, and all these steps will help you to better understand why certain recipes are not turning out the way you want them to, so that you can tweak each recipe to fit what you desire in a baked good. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to me and to finding out about new things about baking.